Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by Mr. Levi Tillemann. He is running in Colorado in the Congressional 6th District, which actually votes on Tuesday. So make sure you hit up all your friends, send them this link, or send Levi's website, which we'll be posting in the comments. So thank you so much for joining us, Levi. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry we had a little bit of technical difficulty getting this rolling, but I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, totally my fault, guys. Seriously, you guys know how I am with IT stuff. I'll take the blame. So you are an author and a businessman. When I looked up your information, it says your employer is New America Foundation. What is that?
So that's actually old information. I was at New America for a little while. I was on a fellowship there working on research related to clean energy and artificial intelligence. And one of my big passions is dealing with what I call market failures. Basically, when the market isn't working in society's best interest, and the energy industry is a really good example of that. You have a bunch of big companies that are making a lot of money, but at the same time, they're wrecking our environments and they're destroying the climate for future generations. And artificial intelligence is another industry where that is a real threat. And so I was working on some research around that at New America. My current employer, though I've stepped away from that since last July, is Valence Strategic. And Valence Strategic is a consulting company where we try to help companies and countries. Germany and Japan are both clients of ours. A number of different NGOs like the Energy Foundation and the Environmental Defense Fund figure out how they are going to be impacted by the future of robotics and artificial intelligence, and of course, renewable energy, with a special focus on electric vehicles.
Okay, awesome. And I did see when I was looking up, when I was researching you, that you did work as an energy official on Obama's campaign, or under Obama.
Yeah, not on the campaign. I was actually part of the administration, and I joined the administration because I felt that we were at a transformational moment in the energy economy, and that if we instituted the right policies, then this clean energy transition could really happen. And it could happen much faster than a lot of people expected. So I did a lot of work on infrastructure. I did a lot of work on electric cars. That's kind of my pet project. I started our first group at the Department of Energy working on autonomous vehicles and trying to figure out how we could deal with the energy implications of autonomous vehicles. And then they threw a bunch of other stuff at me throughout.
So as someone who is, so environmentally conscious and what have you, how did it affect you when something like, say, DAPL was going on and President Obama just completely ignored it?
Yeah, I think that the Obama administration had a bunch of conflicting forces operating within it. One thing that struck me was just down the hall from where I worked, there were people who were powerful members of the Obama administration who were real allies of ExxonMobil and Anadarko and the natural gas industry. And it was a little bit of a war. I was always on the more progressive, the more green, and the more aggressively transformational side of that argument. And the end result was sometimes you had some internal struggles there. I remember I published a report. One thing that ended up outlasting me in the administration was a report I put together called Revolution Now, the Future Arrives for 4 Clean Energy Technologies. And there were people in the administration that didn't want that report to go out because they felt that it was too forward-leaning. They felt that there was some messaging risk associated with it. And I said, no, guys, we need to show the world that this is happening, and it's happening now, and the data backs us up. And so, you always had to fight for what you believed in, even when you're working within a solid blue administration.
Absolutely. You do have a lot about fracking and things like that on your platform. And you do state that you want all renewable energy by 2035, which is less than 20 years.
Yeah.
So do you think that is feasible? I know we all hope it is, but do you think it is, plausible?
It's a huge challenge. And I look at 2035 as a worthy and aspirational goal. And I think that we should concentrate our policy and our resources towards that date. And the benefit of having an earlier date like that, a more aggressive date like that, is that if we miss our goal, if we don't make it by 2035, then we'll make it by 2036 or 2037 or maybe 2040. But if instead we're shooting for 2045, we might not make it until 2055. And this is a crisis. We need to move now. We need to make sure that we are not irreparably damaging our climate for future generations, which quite frankly, we're already in the process of doing. And so there's no time to wait.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point. You are very passionate about immigration and dreamers. And I was reading a synopsis of your story, in lack of a better term, and you stated that about 60 years ago, your grandparents came to America as Holocaust survivors. So how does that affect you as to what's going on right now?
Yeah, so there is a phrase in the Jewish Passover ceremony that says that you must always be hospitable to the dreamer, not the dreamer, to the immigrant, to the stranger, to someone who is in your land but is not from your land, because we were strangers in Egypt. And so we need to treat them with the same respect and with the same warmth that we do people who were born and raised in our own country. And every single year when we read that, it really hits me hard. It brings a tear to my eye because I grew up in a working class Latino neighborhood. And when I was very young, my parents actually adopted a young girl whose mother had died, but who came here without papers. And so we grew up with this issue of undocumented immigrants in our household. And luckily for Dulcia, Ronald Reagan decided that this was an important issue to him. And he pushed an amnesty for people like Dulcia that were living in the country, but didn't have papers. To me, the way that the Republicans have dealt with this issue in the past and the way that Donald Trump is dealing with this issue right now, separating children from their parents, is one of the blackest marks on American history in recent memory. It is a disgrace. It is immoral. It is unacceptable. And, it just shows how far off track this country has gone. And it adds to the reasons why I think we need to get rid of Donald Trump, and we need to make sure that this country is turned in a different direction.
Now, a lot of people are Dem exit. A lot of people feel that because of the way the Democrats, I mean, myself, I became a very proud independent after the way they cheated Bernie and everything like that. So that being said, a lot of people did Dem exit, and a lot of people feel that the Democrats only talk about how much they hate Trump, not what they believe in, only what they don't believe in. Not you necessarily, but Democrats as a whole, more so than Nancy.
We always lead with policy, and some of the policies that are sort of basic to my platform are Medicare for all. Everybody needs health care. This is not something that you pick and choose when you need it. I believe that every young person is entitled to an education. And so if a family makes less than $120,000 a year, we believe that their kids should get free tuition at state and local universities. I believe that we need to deal with the issue of inequality in this society. And so at very minimum, we need to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And, part part of that quest for equality and part of that platform is also moving to renewable energy, because a lot of the worst effects of climate change are going to fall on the shoulders of communities that are already disadvantaged and disenfranchised in so many different ways. So those are the policies that I'm fighting for. Those are the policies that I'm going to support when I go to Washington. But equality is fundamental to all of the policies that I am pursuing. And that also means equality of the law, which means that if you believe that the president is a criminal, and I believe that he has committed obstruction of justice, he has committed abuse of office, he has probably colluded with the Russians. I think there's a lot of evidence behind that. Then you have to send a message to America and to the world that just because you're wearing a suit or sitting in the White House doesn't mean you're above the law. And so we have that as part of a broader package of policies that are based on combating inequality in America today.
And it gives us hope that so many progressives are running. If you are elected, do you, give your word that you will be trying to tell these other Democrats like Nancy Pelosi and, just complete neolibs who have never, who are not for the people, they're for the big donors. Do you agree to fight for, a higher minimum wage and Medicare for all? Because that's who we need. We need people in there who are going to not just put it on their platform, but go to bat for us.
If there is one thing that we have demonstrated without a shadow of a doubt over the course of this campaign, it's that we're going to fight for truth. We're going to fight for justice. We're going to fight for what we believe in, even if that means going up against members of our own party that we generally agree with on a lot of issues. But where we think they're wrong, where we think they're out of line, where we think that they're sandbagging and they're not doing enough, fast enough, we are going to push them to go faster, farther.
Awesome. Yeah, I was looking at, you have a checklist of you, your opponent, and then the Republican. And it's interesting because your opponent, who's a Democrat, only agrees with you on two things, as does the Republican. So I think that kind of says a lot. They don't support Medicare for all, which is, a huge litmus test, and also big money. You've agreed not to take any contributions from any corporations or PAC money. What led to that decision? Was that an early on thing when you decided to run?
A lot of it came from my campaign finance director. She had worked for the candidate who ran in this district 2 cycles ago, and he had refused all PAC money. And so she was the first person who came on to my campaign, and we had a lot of discussions about what about accepting money from unions or from environmental groups or from other PACs that we agree with their basic mission. And at the end of the day, we decided that the right thing to do was to reject all big money, to reject all PAC money, and to fight for policies that were based on what we believe in, not who's lining our pockets. And so we eliminated all of those conflicts of interest by rejecting all PAC money.
Awesome. You, the reason I heard of you is probably why a lot of other people initially heard of you as well. I interviewed Gabriel MacArthur, so I'm friends with him. I know that Gabriel's a member of Real Progressives. For you guys who don't know, he was running in the same race as Levi, but their platforms were so similar. So I digress. I heard the tape that you basically you caught a DCCC whip member on tape, basically admitting to colluding against you. So do you want to kind of explain the things you went through to even get to that point, because I know you went through a lot of trials up to that point, and then also what transpired on that tape, which you guys, we are putting the link in the chat.
So one of the really interesting things, and I think one of the sad things when it comes to our media landscape, is this is probably one of the most vivid examples of corruption and Washington insiders trying to rig the system in modern history. We had been receiving subtle and not so subtle messages from Democratic insiders for a long time, including people threatening staff that I was attempting to hire and telling them that if they worked for us, they would never work in the state again. And when Steny Hoyer, who was the #2 Democrat in the US House of Representatives, came to town to fundraise for my Democratic opponent, who the DCCC had been fundraising for and shoveling data and resources towards and helping with endorsements since before anyone in the district knew who he was, since before they had admitted to having a preference for that particular candidate in the race. When he came into town to throw a fundraiser for this candidate, he asked to sit down with me one-on-one. And we had had enough conversations where Democratic insiders put the squeeze on us and tried to force us to stifle conversation and to hold back in our efforts to actually win this race, that I decided, we needed to have proof that this was happening, that we had seen enough that it was a pattern of obstruction and that it was undemocratic. And so I recorded the conversation, and eventually, not immediately, eventually I shared it with a publication called The Intercept, and they published a large portion of that conversation online. Now, let's get back to where I started talking about the media landscape. This caused a big stir among people who were very engaged, among a lot of Bernie-crats who felt like the same thing happened in 2016 and disenfranchised them, but it wasn't picked up by the mainstream media, hardly at all. The Washington Post wrote about it a little bit, the New York Times wrote about it a little bit, but mostly they wrote about it saying, this is okay. This is what the party does. This is what democracy looks like. And I can tell you, this is not what democracy should look like. Now, let's compare that to a policy proposal that we put out about 2 weeks ago, where we were trying to figure out a way to break the impasse between Democrats and Republicans on gun safety. Democrats have a list of gun safety reforms that mostly focus on limiting access to guns for people who, quite frankly, shouldn't have them. Republicans are adamantly against those policies. And so we were talking about ways that we could make our schools safer and that would hopefully be acceptable to both Democrats and Republicans. And what we came up with was putting non-lethal defense tools in our schools. And the best example of that is pepper spray, a really robust, long-range pepper spray that if a teacher is pinned in her or his classroom and a gunman bursts through that door, she can, get him with that pepper spray, or he can get him with that pepper spray and incapacitate him. It is an incredibly painful thing to experience. So as part of that, I pepper sprayed myself in the face. Within less than a week, we had about 225,000 views on that video. It had gone viral all over the world. We've been covered on every TV station you can imagine. And we became one of the biggest topics of discussion in the national media. Now, this is a good idea. It's a good policy proposal. But the thing that the media was reacting to was the spectacle of a congressional candidate getting hit in the face with pepper spray. They weren't really reacting to the policy proposal. And when we captured the #2 most powerful Democrat in the House of Representatives saying, we know better than the people of the 6th Congressional District. We rigged this election from day one. We're shoveling money and resources at your Democratic opponent, and we're going to continue to do that. Nobody cared. Some people cared, but they were people who were very engaged Bernie-crats and had seen this movie before. And unfortunately, that is a big part of what's wrong with politics and media in our country today. We know how to create a nationwide media storm. And unfortunately, it's not with serious policy proposals. It's with spectacle.
Absolutely. That's why I love being part of independent media. I can actually talk about things that matter. That's what's so fascinating about the guy that you caught on tape. He was such an apologist, and he kept saying, well, that happens in life, and he just kept, it was not a big deal to him at all. He admitted they were tipping the scales against you. He admitted he wanted you to drop out. This was astounding to me because he was completely unapologetic.
And the worst part about it is I asked him, so you're saying you know better than the voters of the 6th Congressional District? And he said, we've been through this district a number of times, and the vote that they are going to cast that matters is their vote in the general election. That is not how our system is supposed to work. There are countries where there is a party list and the party picks the candidates and they run those candidates. And if that is your system, then more power to you. That is your right and your authority and your responsibility to pick who is going to be on that party list. But we are supposed to have free and fair elections in the primary as well as the general election. And unfortunately, it seems that some of the Democratic leadership isn't as committed to those principles as I am and as we are on this call and I think in this chat room.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I know a lot of your constituents do mail-in ballots. I know that's quite common in Colorado. What would you like to see? Are you guys open primary?
Yes. So independents can vote in the Democratic primary. Today is the last day that you can mail your ballot in, but you can fill in your ballot, which hopefully you've received in the mail by this point, and you can take it to a designated drop box. And so starting tomorrow, if you want to vote and have that vote, you need to fill out your ballot, and then you need to figure out where one of those drop boxes are. Usually they're at libraries or they're at City Hall or other places like that, and drop your ballot off there.
That's so much more convenient from so many. I mean, I'm in Pennsylvania. We have closed primaries, have to register a month beforehand, all of that. And I've interviewed almost 90 candidates from across the country, and it's just, they're all different. What do you hope to see in the way of progress as far as electoral reform?
Well, first of all, we have to win this election. This is the most important Democratic primary in America that is happening right now. And the reason is not me. There are a lot of great candidates who stand for good policies like I do. It's the fact that my team and my supporters have stood up to corruption in Washington. And we've said, if we're going to get America back on track, we have to start at home. And we have to make sure that our party is doing things right. So there's a really stark choice here. You can vote for a candidate who has refused to debate, even though he's never held elected office. You can vote for a candidate whose first major strategic decision was to collude with Washington insiders and to deceive the voters of the district and to tell them that he had no special relationship with the DCCC. Or you can vote for a candidate who has been scrupulously honest and has shown some real backbone in standing up to Washington insiders who are trying to meddle in local elections. And so we really need your help. We do need your financial support if you contribute to campaigns. If you're in the district, then we need you to come by the office and to volunteer. And more than anything, we need your vote.
Absolutely. And you guys, as I said, yeah, it's District 6, you guys. And as I said, you guys send this video and also the video we put in the comments to your friends and family in Colorado, because at the very least, even if you're torn between the two candidates, vote for Levi so we can give a big FU to the DCCC. I mean, it's a win-win. But yeah.
Hopefully you're not too torn between the two candidates.
What's that?
I said, hopefully you're not too torn between the two.
Right.
I think we present a pretty stark alternative to the other Democrats.
Yes. Yeah, a little different dichotomy there. But thank you so much for joining us. I know you're kind of limited because you do vote Tuesday. But what is something you'd like to leave our guests with to a final thought so that they recommend you to their Facebook friends and family?
Well, I think if we're going to get America back on track, then we have to make a really firm promise to ourselves, which is that we're going to stop playing the games that Washington insiders love so much. We have to stop trying to control the process. We have to let democracy work. We have to fight for truth. We have to fight for justice. We have to fight for equality. And we can't back down. We cannot let them cow us into backing down on these fundamental principles. And that starts here, that starts today. Because if progressives win in primaries across the country, then we will be a force to be reckoned with in Washington, and we can change the future of this country. The last thing I'll say is the nature of incumbency is such that this incoming class of Democrats is going to have a massive impact on American policy for decades to come. And so that's why it's so important that we elect progressives. This is likely, though not assuredly, but likely, it's going to be a blue wave election. And if we send 40 or 50 new blue dog Democrats to Washington, let me tell you what that means. That means we're not going to get universal health care. That means we're not going to get a $15 an hour minimum wage. That means we're not going to get a full transition to renewable energy by 2035. And so we need to focus like a laser beam on these primaries. We need to fight and we need to win.
Absolutely. No more centrists.
Oh, I see Mark asking, is Aurora in my district? That is the heart of my district, Mark. So we have Thornton, we have Brighton, we have Aurora, we have Centennial, we have Littleton, and I think that's most of it. We have a little bit of Denver and some other like little nooks and crannies of unincorporated spaces, but those are the major parts of the district.
And Mark also asked, is your district east of 225?
225. It actually straddles 225. So 225 is like a mile from my house, maybe half a mile from my house, and then it extends beyond 225 as well.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you the best of luck. Definitely feel free to check out the comments later. And we posted your website and the article and everything like that in there as well. Do you want to give your website? Absolutely.
Yeah, the website is levi4colorado.com. And I want to thank Mark for all the great questions. I see you were very engaged, and unfortunately, I was not paying attention to those questions until now. So thank you, Mark, Jenna, and Elaine, and all of you guys for participating. And thank you so much, Joy, for having me on. I'd love to come back another time. And now we've got the technical stuff figured out, so hopefully we can have a longer conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Levi. I wish you the best. And don't forget, you guys, if you haven't mailed in your vote, Tuesday, there are 5 primaries, including New York as well. Now, Wednesday, I'm having on a gentleman, Adam Davis from, he's a Green running in Utah. So we'll see I'm kind of curious to see how that's going. But thank you so much once again, Levi, and thank you guys for watching.
My pleasure. Thanks, Joyce. See you later.
Bye-bye.